Today we're going to talk about the token that basically started a civil war inside of Bitcoin. It completely shattered what everyone thought was possible and forced the entire community to ask one single fundamental question about what Bitcoin is even for.
See, for more than a decade, Bitcoin's whole identity was wrapped up in its simplicity. It had one purpose, one mission, and that wasn't a bug. It was its greatest feature.
And that mission was just to be digital money. That's it. No complicated apps, no NFTs, no weird experiments. It was clean, it was pure, and that was the entire point.
But then, in 2023, everything changed. Someone figured out a way to create tokens not on top of Bitcoin, but inside of it. And all of a sudden, this almost forbidden question started getting asked. What if Bitcoin could be more than just money?
This gets us to the heart of it, to a token called ORDI. It was the very first of its kind. And to get why it's so controversial, you really have to understand that it just doesn't work like a normal token.
So how in the world is this even possible, right? Well, it's actually a really clever three-step process. First, something called Ordinals basically gives a unique serial number to every single Satoshi. That's the smallest possible fraction of a Bitcoin. Second, inscriptions let you actually write data, like some text, directly onto one of those numbered Satoshis. And third, this new standard called BRC20 uses that written data to create the rules for a whole new kind of token.
So the key thing to get here is that BRC20 is not some complex smart contract system like you'd find on Ethereum. Not at all. It's a much more direct, almost brute force kind of method. You're literally etching a token's existence onto the tiniest bits of Bitcoin itself.
And this quote just nails the key difference. See, most tokens are like buildings built on top of a foundation like Ethereum. But ORDI and these BRC20s, they live inside the foundation. They're woven into the very fabric of Bitcoin's main ledger. And that, right there, changes everything.
So yeah, this wasn't just some technical update. It was a philosophical bomb. And almost overnight, it lit a fire that started a massive debate, pitting Bitcoiners against, well, other Bitcoiners.
And what started as this little niche experiment in early 2023 just went viral in that classic crypto way. You know the drill. The buzz starts on Twitter, then the big exchanges listed, retail investors pile in, and speculation just goes through the roof. In just a handful of months, the entire narrative around Bitcoin had shifted.
This whole thing basically created two warring factions. On one side, you got the supporters, Team Evolution, who are saying, this is great, it brings new users, new energy to Bitcoin. But on the other side, you've got the purists, and they are saying, this just clutters up the blockchain with junk, drives transaction fees sky high, and worse, that it completely betrays Satoshi's original vision.
And this fight wasn't just theoretical. It had very real consequences. The Bitcoin network actually got congested. Suddenly, sending a simple transaction cost a lot more money and took a lot longer. The whole user experience was clunky, and honestly, it opened the floodgates for a ton of low-effort, purely speculative tokens. It got messy.
So now that the dust has settled a bit, what can we say is ORDI's lasting impact? Well, the answer is a little more complicated than you might think.
Let's just be blunt about it. The uncomfortable truth is that ORDI itself doesn't really do anything. It's not some groundbreaking piece of tech. It's not a complex platform. It doesn't have a bunch of cool features. Its technical utility is pretty much zero.
So why do we even care? Why are we talking about it? Because its value isn't technical, it's symbolic. And in crypto, being the first of anything carries a ton of weight. ORDI represents the beginning of a whole new story for Bitcoin. It proved that this protocol that everyone thought was set in stone could actually change. It's a historical artifact now.
And you know that news story has already moved on. Today, the real energy, the real development has shifted to more advanced stuff. Things like the Runes protocol, which is kind of like the next evolution of this idea, and Bitcoin Layer 2s, which are all about helping Bitcoin scale. BRC20s are still around, sure, but they are definitely not the main event anymore.
So here's the real takeaway. ORDI isn't the future, but it was the catalyst for the future. It kicked open a door that pretty much everyone thought was permanently locked, and now everybody is rushing through to see what's on the other side.
Which leaves us with the single biggest question facing Bitcoin today, the one that ORDI forced us all to look at. Should Bitcoin stick to its original mission? Should it just stay simple, pure, digital money? Or should it embrace all this chaos and evolve into something more complex, something more capable, something more? That is the billion-dollar question.